Steve Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When you were processing these ballots, at any point in time, were there ever any poll watchers, poll challengers, and if so, were they from both parties or just one party?
Just from the Democratic Party. Actually, one day I happened to talk to one of the persons. She came from D.C. Democratic Party. I don't remember seeing anybody from the other party.
Representative C.A. Johnson. Representative C.A. Johnson, why don't you go ahead?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay. Good evening.
Good evening, Ms. Johnson.
Your name is Jesse
Jacob.
Jesse Jacobs. Is that your birth name?
Okay. My first name is Jesse. When I was married, my husband's last name is Jacob. When I got married in 1983, 37 years ago, I had my maiden name. That's my dad's house name. It's a long name.
Can you spell it, please?
K like kite, I-Z-H-A-K-E-K-A-R-A.
Representative, what is your question, please?
I'm asking the question.
Well, please ask.
She gave a lot of information. I just want to
understand.
know who
And-
she is.
Representative, please, it's reasonable to ask the name of the person.
Yes.
I'm with you there. But now that you know it,
What was your first name?
Jesse.
Jesse. Thank you.
J-E-S-S-Y, not E.
Jessy.
Y.
Thank you very much.
okay, now please move on to your question,
That's
Representative.
it. You asked
Okay.
that one.
Thank you. Representative,
And my middle name is Sunny. My middle name is Sunny. S-U-N-N-Y.
and I think it's important, Representative C.A. Johnson. I mean, if that was, we're not here to intimidate people. I mean,
That's okay. That's okay.
Okay, I mean, we want to hear what happened. So, Representative Camilleri, please proceed with your question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Giuliani, before you
I'm going to
began,
gavel this. The question is for the witness. As I told you at the end, you're able to ask a question to Mr. Giuliani.
we have three people actually before our panel today. Each of them is
Representative,
before our panel, and
I'm
I know that you gave your power away to Mr. Giuliani to ask questions during this part of the testimony. That's fine, but it is now my right as a representative to ask a question of the people before our committee. This is not for
Representative,
this is
you're
not
out of order.
This is not
If you
Four
do not
Seasons
have a question,
Landscaping. This is a committee
Representative-
of the state legislature. I should have a right to ask a question of who is before us.
I will allow you to ask a question at the end of Mr. Giuliani, as I stated at the beginning. If you have a question for the witness, Ms. Jacob, please ask it. If you don't, then I'm going to move on.
Ms. Jacobs, I know that you've given testimony previously. We've heard your story in the media. I know that you gave testimony yesterday as well. Judge Kenny in Wayne County Circuit Court.
May I ask?
He has
give testimony yesterday.
I apologize.
Okay,
I
yeah,
apologize.
Representative,
I
please
apologize.
tell us your
That's
question.
very misleading.
You've asked a lot of misleading questions yourself, Mr. Giuliani.
Representative
I appreciate that.
Camilleri, please, what is your question?
My question, Ms. Jacobs, is Judge Kenny has ruled that your testimony in court is incorrect and not credible. So why should we believe anything that you said here today?
I'm not aware of any such ruling. She's never been a witness in court. It would have been impossible for a judge to
Your
rule.
affidavit was ruled
May I please finish?
incorrect and not
May
credible.
I have the courtesy of finishing?
What,
She has never been a witness in court, so no judge could ever have assessed her credibility.
what is your question, Mr. Camilleri?
Why are we listening to your story here today if it has already been ruled incorrect and not credible by a judge in court?
It has not been ruled.
It has. Well, this is
Okay,
not a courtroom, Mr.
Representative,
Giuliani. This is a committee. Why do you keep objecting to what I'm saying here?
Representative, is there an answer to that?
Okay, you can go and ask the judge who denied that. Okay, I don't know anything about it.
Okay, thank you. We're going to move on. Vice Chair Riley with a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, my question, I noticed you said you looked at some of the signatures. Well, like what percentage of the signatures would you say did not match or did not look right?
No, when I was at the satellite sites working as a processor, I always made sure the signatures matched. This was at TCF Center on November 4th.
And yeah, and at that point, did you look at any of the signatures?
Yes.
And
And I showed that to Mr. Chris Thomas, and he said, let it go. It was totally different. Let it go. And after that, I was kicked out.
okay.
I was told not to validate any more ballots
so just one chance. Okay, very good.
for that day. Yes.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. With that, there are no more questions for you, Ms. Jacob. Thank you for your testimony today. You're very brave coming here, and thank you.
Thank you so much. I am so thankful to this honorable body for having me and for listening to me. Thank you so much.
I understand we have next, is it Melissa Carbone? Carone? All right. Please come up when you're ready. And if possible, if we can limit this to 10 minutes, I'd appreciate that. Mr. Giuliani, you indicated that the first person was somebody who hadn't testified before, didn't testify yesterday.
Longer than I expected. But
Sure. And so we
I
gave
felt
her
uncomfortable
some-
interrupting her.
No, I understand, and I think she had a very valuable story to tell, and she was very brave coming here, obviously at great risk, and, we understand that. But from here on, if we can condense these testimonies, if we can allow
Can you do it in
more
10
questions to come from the members, we'd appreciate that, sir. So with that, please, Melissa, we'd like to hear your story, and please, when you're ready, proceed.
Melissa, why don't you tell us your name and tell us as short and as briefly as you can what happened when you were working for Dominion.
Sure. My name is Melissa Carone. I was contracted to work for Dominion Voting Systems. I'm a freelance IT worker. I was contracted to work for Dominion to assist with IT during the election. I started work at 6 a.m. on November 3rd at the TCF Center. I got off work at 5 a.m. November 4th. Went home, went to bed, returned to work at 10 a.m. November 4th, stayed until approximately 2 p.m. November 4th. When I got off, I had a doctor's appointment. I was supposed to come back to work. One of the Dominion employees, he's in my affidavit, his name is Samuel, texted me and said, "We're almost done counting ballots. We don't need you to come back." It was getting a little rowdy when I left. I really didn't want to come back anyways. So that is why that I was contracted to work for Dominion, assisting with IT.
And when you were working there, what did you observe?
I observed numerous employees, city workers, running batches of ballots through the tabulators countless times without discarding them first. The tabulating machines would jam 2 to 3 times an hour. When they would jam, the correct process would be to pull out the problem ballot that jammed. Say the problem ballot was number 24 out of 50. I wasn't allowed to touch any hardware at all. I would assist them, tell them to pull out this ballot, put the problem ballot on top. In Michigan, our ballots from the tabulators don't just drop into steel ballot boxes. They are now, as they got tabulated, they are now on top of the tabulating machine. Okay? So instead of them taking these, so say, let's keep it number 25 is the problem ballot, it got jammed. So the computer would throw an error. It would say ballot number 25, there's an error. I would say pull out ballot number 25, slowly pull it out, put it on top, take the the ballots that had already been tabulated, which are on top of the tabulating machine now, put them all back in a stack, discard the entire batch, and re-scan it. Instead of discarding, they were just rescanning, counting ballots 9 to 10 times, counting votes 9 to 10 times.
So they were counting the same ballot, the same vote, 9 or 10 times.
Yes, sir. They were counting them 9 or 10
How many times did you observe that?
These machines would jam 2 to 3 times an hour each machine. There were approximately 22 to 24 tabulating machines in the TCF Center. I observed it thousands of times.
Thousands of times? And how many were there 20 machines, approximately?
Approximately between 22 to 24 machines.
And were there any Republicans who were observing, or just Democrats?
I saw very few Republicans, about 3
And
total.
how about those 20 machines? Did you see any of them observing those 20 machines where the ballot was being put in 10 or 20 times?
Big question. I got some of them questioning me. My manager had came up to me. I had called my manager over to a specific tabulating machine. I showed him a number on it, which was close to 500. It should never go over 50. Ballots come in batches of 50. I said, we have a severe problem here. Nick, autonomous, which is a part owner of Dominion. And he said, Melissa, I don't want to hear that we have a problem. He said, we are here to assist with IT. We are not here to run their election. That is exactly what he said to me. At that point, I was just really frustrated and upset. I could tell what was going on. I knew what was going on at that point.
What was going on?
He was in on it. They were all in on it.
In on what?
They were cheating. It was very, very apparent. It was apparent he knew. It was apparent that he was in on it. And when he caught on to me knowing that he was in on it, he just wanted nothing to do with me.
Now, did there come a time when 2 vans pulled up
Yes.
in the back
Yes, sir.
late at night?
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Approximately 4 o'clock, the garage door of the TCF Center opened. The counting room in the TCF Center is in the basement. So when the garage door opened, a van pulled up, one on day shift, one on night shift. They were supposed to be for food because they were short on food for the workers. That's what they said over the microphone. That's what Daniel Baxter said. He said they had food for 1/3 of the workers. And that they would provide food and it would be there shortly. Well, food never came out of these vans.
Yes, what's your point of order, Representative?
We have these people coming in here testifying, making claims. They should be under, we should have them under, what do you call it?
Oh,
Under oath.
Representative, we don't do
oath
that.
here.
Representative, we're not going to do that. You're out of
I have
order.
an affidavit. I'm under
You're out of order, Representative. We don't do that here in Michigan. We've never done that.
I wrote an affidavit.
Mr. Chairman,
We're gonna move on.
she has an
And Biden
affidavit.
never has done.
She has an affidavit under oath.
And it should not be
Representative.
under oath.
Please continue, and if we could have fewer back and forth, and maybe you can tell your story. No, I'm talking with Mr. Giuliani. We really want to get through this, and this is sort of a format that is a little unusual to our committee. So if it's possible to tell a little more of your story, and I understand you're trying to speed it up, but we want to make sure we get through everything today, Mr. Giuliani.
Good. And read some from your affidavit. That's your affidavit under oath.
So I have 19 things in my affidavit. I was at the TCF Center for 27 hours. I'm a mother. I have 2 children, and I have 2 degrees. I'm very, I would never, I don't know any woman in the world that would write an affidavit under oath just to write it. you can go to prison for this. So anyways, I want to make this very clear. I was initially supposed to work at the Detroit Department of Elections building. That was an order by my manager, Nick Economagounis, part owner of Dominion. I have it all in emails. I was trained on the adjudication and tabulation process. So in the email, it says you are to park in a parking lot and get shuttled over to this, they referred to it as the Chicago warehouse. I know for a fact there was illegal activity going on there. People have pictures of people carrying ballots out of that place. There is pictures of vans full of ballots coming out of that place. If it wasn't for my mother, I would have went there. My mom told me, no way. This sounds really, really weird. And I have 2 young children, as I stated, that I needed access to my vehicle in case something happened. I ended up telling them that, and they said, okay, we'll put you at the TCF Center. Well, Samuel, there was 5 employees, 3 permanent employees of Dominion, 2 contract employees, me, a contract employee, and there was a 90-year-old man. Last name Smiley. I have all of his paperwork. I have all their names, last names. 4 employees that were scheduled to work in the city of Detroit that were not at the TCF Center were all at this Chicago warehouse, which was the city election department building. Anyways, so I also witnessed. There was a point in the night where Samuel and Nick said that there was a big data loss. They started freaking out, stepped off the stage, got on their phones. I asked them what was going on. They said it was taken care of. Nick sent Samuel over to this warehouse for about 3 hours. When he got back, I said, where were you? Where'd you go? He said, I was at the warehouse. And I said, what were you doing there? And he's like, nothing. They just needed my help. Well, I said, where is this warehouse? And he said, because I wasn't putting 2 and 2 together yet that I, was initially supposed to work there because I'd never even looked up the address. And what I believe is it wasn't a data loss. It was actually when they found out Trump was ahead 100,000 votes, and they sent Nick over there to assist with these ballots that came in these vans full of ballots that people can attest to that they witnessed being carried out of these vans at the TCF Center. I didn't see any ballots being carried out of vans. I'm not going to lie. I didn't see anything being carried out of them, but I know people who have and did see this occurring. But I also witnessed the adjudication process. Numerous adjudicators machines were, all the ballots were being judged by 2 Democrats. I heard them talking. One woman said to another woman, are you a Republican or are you a Democrat? She said, I'm a Democrat. And she said, well, so am I. Let's sit together. Sat together all night judging ballots. Thousands of ballots got judged all night by the reason the rule's there is so, it can be a fair process. It wasn't a fair process. It wasn't a fair process at all. And the tabulating problem with them running numerous ballots through these tabulators and just continuing to do it. I had a friend that I knew for over 20 years, and he came up to me and said, he was working the night shift. He came up to me and said, Melissa, we did not get any training at all. None. He goes, I have no idea what I'm doing. He was with 3 other people. I said, I just told my manager that. I said, I could tell you guys don't know what you're doing. And he said, nope, we were trained on the adjudication process, not the tabulation process. And I said, so you don't know what you're doing? And he said, nope. I said, great, that's just great. Because nobody was helping me. I was, running around assisting these people all night long. And it was all day and all night. It was crazy. And they were running these ballots through without discarding them countless times. There were so many ballots ran through these tabulators numerous times. I mean, without any oversight at all. I mean, there's so much. This election, I will say, these Democrats took every avenue possible to commit fraud in this election, and what I saw on the 3rd and 4th was over 20 counts of fraud being taking place in front of my face, and this isn't counting. The ballots that are found in rivers, the ballots found under rocks, the ballots, that ended up.
First of all,
Representative, please.
let me tell you
Representative,
why I'm asking you to hold it.
do you have a point of
I
order?
love how you can
What's
just
your
say
point of
whatever
order?
you want to say.
Do you have a point of order, Representative?
She's just.
Cynthia wants to defend the fraud.
This is funny.
All right. Ma'am, please continue.
Yeah. So,
And also, by the way, I mean, can you maybe speak to your experience? I know we've heard stories of ballots being thrown in rivers, but I want to make sure we're speaking to your experience because we have limited time and we got to
Absolutely.
get our questions in and the
Okay,
other
well-
witnesses. So is there more to your experience? And then
well, okay, I called the FBI
Yeah, okay.
on the 8th, November 8th. I talked to 2 separate women, over 40 minutes. The first one gave her all my information. The phone mysteriously cut out, and she never called me back. I was waiting for her to call me back. She never called me back. I had to call them back, and they never called me back. Never got a call back. Still haven't got a call back. And I had somebody else working on it that has a neighbor that's an old FBI agent, and still haven't heard back from that.
Can I ask you just one last question?
Sure.
Melissa? So how many ballots would you estimate in front of you that you observed were counted multiple times in the machine? Can you put a number to it, an estimated number?
At
best
least
you can do.
30,000.
At least 30,000. Okay. Thank you. Okay.
thank you. And I guess I'll ask a question. I just want to understand. So what is your role with Dominion? Can you clarify that?
Hey,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Okay, of what organization?
I'm sorry.
So were you were like a contract employee of Dominion, or was there some?
So I have
Contractor.
my resume everywhere,
Yeah.
and because I was laid off from Ford,
Mm-hmm.
so they just found my resume and called me and said, "Do you want to work the election, the 3rd and the 4th?"
I see, but you were employed directly by Dominion.
Did Dominion pay me? No. PDS staffing paid me.
Okay.
Because they called me, but I was working for Dominion. Yes.
Okay.
Something very, very suspicious too, must I add, that we were not allowed to wear name tags at all. We were not allowed to talk about who we worked for. They were very secretive. They didn't want anybody knowing anything about them.
And so I just want to make sure I understand you correctly. So you said you're alleging that you heard or that you witnessed ballots being put in the machine, run through, counted, and then put through again? Is that what you're alleging?
Without discarding.
Mm-hmm.
That is what I am telling you to be a fact.
And how many times did you witness this happening?
I witnessed it in a 27-hour period, thousands and thousands of times.
Yeah, that's very interesting, and I will note, Dominion won't come before this committee. I've asked them, and so far they've refused, and I do want them to come before this committee because we need answers from them about how their machines
missing.
work.
They're
So we're going to continue to try to get them here. But with that, I'll go to Representative LaFave.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I am not sure how I'm going to do this with one question, but I'm going to try my best anyway. So, with these tabulator machines, of which you estimate there are approximately 22 to 24, I guess I'm not understanding. So, you place batches of 50 on top of the machine.
No. Okay, so we're going to look, I'm going to try to explain it to you as if it's a printer, okay?
Thank you.
Okay, so a printer, when the papers come out of the printer, that's where in these tabulators, that's where you would feed the 50 in, okay? Now, on top of the printer, right, so where the scanner would be, right? If it's like a 4-in-1, right? So that's where these ballots would come out after they had been tabulated, okay? So if one jammed, number 25 jammed, right? Then it would put up an error. Discard, rescan. Ballot number 25 has an issue. So they would then take all the ballots that had been tabulated from the top, right? That are now on the top, the 24 that are on the top, the ones that are on the bottom that haven't been tabulated yet, okay? And number 25, the problem ballot, they would put number 25 on top, they would discard the entire batch, and then they would rescan it. Instead of discarding it, they would rescan them, counting those 24 again, okay? Now, let's say it was out of 50, number 48 that jammed. That's 47 being counted again. I'm just using you know what I'm saying? So, does that clarify that? Okay.
It does. And basically you put batches of 50 in until you're done with that precinct, right?
That's what they would do, yes. But a lot of these workers would, they would get a batch of 50 and then they wouldn't get another batch for like 10 minutes. So then the ballot box was behind them, the steel ballot box. So they would have this batch of 50 in front of them for 10 minutes with no oversight. So they would run them through again with no oversight. They just had no idea what was going on. And if they did know what was going on, I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt, right? So I'm saying they have no idea what's going on. Who knows? They did. I have no idea.
That was
I know
helpful.
what my friend said.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative C.A. Johnson. You're on our list. Did you have a question? Okay. Representative Camilleri.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for your testimony. Going back to the ruling from Judge Timothy Kenny, he writes that your description of the events at the TCF Center does not square with any other affidavits.
Yeah.
He says that there are,
My mistake.
excuse me, I'm speaking.
Please,
Thank you.
let's let the representative finish, and then you can answer.
He writes that there are no other reports of lost data or tabulating machines that jammed repeatedly every hour during the count. He also writes that neither Republican nor Democratic challengers nor city officials substantiate your version of these events. The allegations simply are not credible, is what Judge Kenny writes. So my question for you is, you're making claims here today that there's systematic fraud in what's going on in our elections. Are the courts also tied up in that fraud?
Let me tell you what I did by accident, okay? I gave Channel 7 an interview that they tied in to that and made me the witness that's uncredible. guess what? There's going to be a couple behind me that are going to say the same thing I just said. And
The witness before you was also proven not credible as well by
oh
the
no,
same
she
judge.
wasn't, because
She was.
she wasn't even there.
Representative
The very
Camilleri,
first
let her
time
finish,
she has
please.
talked. The very
Ma'am.
first time.
So I just want to understand, I don't know what exactly all the things that are being talked about there are, but can you tell us what you said today is the truth? Is that correct?
Sir, I wrote a written affidavit. Yes, it is 100% true.
Okay, and did other people observe this?
Absolutely. And behind me, you're going to hear a couple.
Okay, and we'll hear
And
from them.
let me just
hopefully.
state this. I was an IT worker on the stage. I was working with Dominion. I had no poll workers were not allowed on the stage. The data loss, nobody would have heard about that besides me, Samuel, and Nick. Okay? Just like nobody knows that Samuel went to the Chicago warehouse besides me because I worked for Dominion. They didn't. They're not going to hear that part. You know what I mean? The poll workers are not going to know that Samuel, they're not even going to know who he is. They're not going to know that he went to the warehouse.
So can you, I think what Representative Camilleri is asking is perhaps why is it that more people, and I know we have a couple here today, but why is it that we're not having more people come forward? I mean, it seems like if there
I'll
was
tell
all
you
this
why.
widespread fraud that, we'd have dozens and dozens of people.
I'll tell you why. My life has been destroyed. My life has been completely destroyed because of this. I've lost family. I've lost friends. I've been threatened. My kids have been threatened. I've had to move. I've had to change my phone number. I've had to get rid of social media. Nobody wants to come forward. They're getting threatened. Their lives are getting ruined. I can't even get an actual job anymore. I can't. Because Democrats like to ruin your lives. That's why.
All right. Let's
Just like they do to Trump.
let's move on to Representative Steve Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So obviously these allegations are very troubling. This is my question here. If these ballots were run through multiple times, as you've alleged, I think you said possibly up to 30,000 times, definitely thousands of times being counted. When we examine the poll book and see who voted, and we count those numbers,
Yes. Yes.
would they then not
Completely off.
off by
That poll-
30,000?
I'd say that poll book is off by over 100,000.
And
That poll book, why don't you look at the registered voters on there? How many registered voters are on there? Do you even know the answer to that?
No, I guess I'm trying to get to the bottom
Zero.
of this here.
Zero. There's zero.
So my question then is if the
Guess how many? Wait. What about the turnout rate? 120%.
Let's let Representative Johnson ask his question, please.
So the poll book number, there's two things that could happen here. Either the poll book number, if ballots were counted multiple times, there's two options. Option number one is that the poll book numbers are not going to match.
They don't.
The actual. Not by thousands and thousands of votes. That's not what we see right now.
Take a
that's
look
option number
again.
one.
Take a look again.
Option number two is that they essentially were filling in names of people who didn't vote.
Dead people too?
So is that? I
Let's
guess,
let
is that your
Representative
suggestion?
Johnson ask his question, and then when
I
he's
thought that
done,
was his answer. Okay.
Well, I guess that's my question here is why we're not seeing the poll book off by 30,000 votes. That's not the case.
What did you guys do? Take it and do something crazy to it?
I'm just saying the numbers are not off by 30,000 votes. So
I know what
are you
I
saying
saw.
that they're filling in?
I know what I saw, and I signed something saying that if I'm wrong, I can go to prison.
Okay.
Did you?
okay,
I'm just trying to ask you a
let me,
legitimate question here.
yeah, let's let Representative Johnson ask his question, and then don't interrupt him. And then,
Okay.
and then if you want to respond to it, that's fine. And did you have more, Representative?
Yeah, I guess I just want to keep following back up with the poll book. So are we saying that the poll book is either wildly off or that they are
Wildly
filling
off.
in names?
It's wildly off, and dead people voted, and illegals voted.
Okay.
So that's my answer.
I think we're going to move on.
Yeah.
Representative LeGrand?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, ma'am, can I ask you a simple question?
Sure.
When did you convey the narrative? When did you communicate substantially the narrative that you've given us today? At what do you recall the date that you gave that to the Trump legal team, to Mr. Giuliani and the woman sitting next to him?
To Mr. Giuliani,
To the team.
to them, I'm working with a different attorney.
Well, they're here with you now, and they heard your story, and it's not the first time they heard it. When did you tell them?
I have
When did you
not
give them
spoken
essentially
directly
the narrative?
to Mr. Giuliani.
Pardon? I'm not. Don't be. I'm not asking you to finesse here. I'm asking you, when did you tell them the narrative that
When
you're
did I
telling us
write
now?
my first affidavit? November 8th.
Thank you. That's a great place to start. Thanks.
Right.
All right.
But does that answer your question? Because
think it does.
It was sent
If
to
it's-
Lauren
if it's-
McLaughlin.
If the
And
narrative,
I don't know.
I think
if
we're
you-
good here.
Got it.
We'll move on. So thank you, Representative LeGrand.
Just clarify for the record, I met her for the first time today and talked to her for the first time yesterday.
But if you're saying the affidavit is essentially consistent with her testimony today, and that was submitted on November 8th, that's great. That's what I wanted to know.
I can't hear you, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I think everybody else could.
His statement was, I think his statement was, if the affidavit matches the testimony today, you're good. Is that what you said?
Of course it matches it.
Okay. All right. With that, I think we'll move on to our next person, if that's all right. Thank you for your testimony today.
Andrew Cito and Hima.
Is that right, or are we going to do the colonel?
I
Which
thought
one?
we'd do Andrew and Hima next together.
Okay.
They're the
that's
two
good.
people that she mentioned.
All right, that makes sense since you mentioned it.
Maybe they can do it together.
All right, and thank you. And
then we'll do the colonel.
Okay, great. And if we could, I hope that we're respectful to the representatives here, both the Republicans and the Democrats. I think we're trying to ask legitimate questions. We're trying to get to the bottom of what happened. And I know the Senate had 7 hours of testimony yesterday. They heard from a lot of people. We've asked, a few more to come today, but we really, truly have, most of us at least, have genuine questions about what happened. And I think they're sincere in many cases. There were a couple that weren't in the early part, but I know with Representative S. Johnson and Representative LeGrand, they were legitimate, fair questions. So we just want to make sure we're respectful to the representatives. I'm also asking the representatives, be respectful to these people. I mean, these are regular citizens of Michigan who've seen things, please, who've seen things that they want to talk about. And you know what? It's pretty intimidating, I'm sure, to come to a legislative committee. Please, everyone. But it's difficult to come to a committee like this and to tell your story. Please, everyone. When you come to a committee like this, it can be tough. It can be intimidating. I know these are very hard stories for people to tell. I just ask that we try to be respectful of one another. And also, we can't, we don't want everybody to hear people yelling in the back. So with that, can you please say your names and tell us why you're here? And we look forward to hearing your stories.
My name is Hima Kolanagi Reddy.
My name is Andrew Cito.
And can you tell us why you're here?
I was a poll challenger, and I got trained by MIGOP and also
Where were you a poll challenger?
at TCF Center.
In Detroit.
Yes.
And were you too?
Yes, I was a volunteer at the TCF Center on election night.
Okay.
I got trained by MIGOP and also by the Election Integrity Fund, but then I received my credentials from the MIGOP. So on the 3rd of November, I was representing MIGOP on the floor. And all I was doing that day was just stand behind the tabulators. I do IT. I have an IT staffing firm, so IT is my specialty. I was standing behind the tabulator machines, and I could tell right away that most of those people did not know what to do when a ballot gets jammed. And I had to literally stand behind them and say, you need to discard when a ballot gets jammed. And just like the previous witness, what she was saying, yes, those tabulators were getting jammed at least, like she said, 3 or 4 times an hour. And if they knew what to do when there is an error, they were doing it right. To explain to the other person who was asking, when you take the jammed ballot out, you have an option to discard the number. There is a column that says, that's actually tabulating. That's incrementally tabulating every time a ballot gets scanned. So when a ballot gets jammed, you have an option to go and say discard. Then it makes it 0. But you also have an option to continue. So what happens is when you take those one jammed ballot plus the rest of the ones that got tabulated and put them through again, like feed them, if you say continue tabulating, it will add to that 24 or 25 wherever it got jammed, and then again rescan this entire thing. Like she said, the number only has to be 50. There were machines, at least not the machines I was guarding. I was behind tabulator number 5 and 6. And because I was on top of them, telling them every single time, stepping forward and saying, you didn't make it 0, those machines were doing okay. But I did come across a couple of other machines where the numbers were 300, 400. It's not supposed to be. But I could clearly tell that some of those people didn't know how to discard and start again. So was there an overcount? Yes. Was it off by thousands? I can't tell. I only can tell what I saw. And I witnessed that some people didn't know what to do when it was getting jammed. I don't know how much of training they all had, but some people did not know IT. Similarly, at the county board, too, where I witnessed this big stack of ballots that came in with a note saying not in EPB/S, which is not in election poll book or system. I didn't even know that can even happen, that you can actually have ballots that are not in the poll book or in the system and still be fed into the system. These people were manually entering it, and I have the table numbers where this was getting done, like the counting board numbers. And they didn't know. They were manually feeding it with a birth date of 1900 something. And when I asked the supervisor why they were manually being fed, they said they did not know. They're only doing their job, and if I have a problem, I could go talk to somebody up there. But the thing is, they didn't even know how to unlock the voter record when it gets jammed. Because I'm in IT and I can understand the code behind it, I had to literally help them. I'm like, you have to go do this and do that. And that's when they kind of knew. So I could clearly tell most of these people didn't have enough training, and they were just monotonously doing their job. And whether it was intentional or not, again, I cannot witness to that. I can only tell what I was there for. And again, I just want to tell everybody here that when we became a poll challenger, our intent was not to get into fights with anybody. I'm an immigrant, and this country gave me a platform to be what I am today. I run a successful IT business. I'm one of the fastest 50 growing companies in America. And I really love this country. When I became a citizen of this country, it was a choice I made. I had to give up my Indian citizenship to become a U.S. citizen. It's a choice we all make. That's a country we grew up in, but this is a country we chose to live. So we just have a lot of respect for this country. Putting ourselves out here, it's not fun. Trying to get our names out there, trying to just kind of intimidate us. You have to understand, coming to a country where we have nobody and then start our life here, it takes a lot of courage. So we do have courage. And especially for me to do this, it's really scary. It was very scary because I am a very private person. I have no social media accounts. I just like to live a very private life. But I knew what was at stake from what I witnessed at TCF, and my heart broke because I had a lot of respect. I still have a lot of respect for this country, and I don't believe in racism as like the mainstream media narrative. This country has given me a lot, and I'm very thankful for it. So today when I'm doing this, it's not because I'm trying to say who's good or who's bad. I'm just saying that this needs to be fixed. In a country like India, we have a national identification card without which we cannot vote. When we come into this country, we have a retina scan, we have fingerprints, everything when we are entering into this country through a border. How is that a vote, which is the single most important thing any person can do, is is actually being cast without an ID, without any kind of oversight, and those ballots getting duplicated without an oversight, and all of this fraud that was happening. It was heartbreaking. So that's why I decided to put myself here. Another thing that I noticed is that there were Democratic challengers there. I don't even call them challengers. They were agitators. They were only there with one purpose. When GOP people or nonpartisan people signed up, we were only trying to ensure that there was integrity. Whereas when Democratic challengers signed up, their only purpose there was to intimidate the GOP people and get them out. So that was what was happening on the 4th when I got on the floor. I didn't have my GOP tag on, so automatically I was assumed to be a Democrat. And I have seen some women who came to me and said, let's get these MFs out. And she was singing that song. And for me, I don't listen to secular music, and these days you can't even tell what is cussing and what is a song. So I thought maybe she was really singing a song. But then when I saw that she was targeting white male Republicans, accusing them of something like your mask slipped, you were not 6 feet away, so you need to go out, and your phone was out, and they were really intimidating all these white people. And I put myself out there, tried to help them, saying, why are you getting them in trouble? And they said, why are you taking their side? Then I showed my GOP tag, and then she said to me that I am on the wrong side because I had a GOP tag on. I was literally shocked that, somebody can judge me because of my political affiliation and say whether or not I'm on the right side or wrong side. I can think for myself. But then at that point, I saw that Republicans were getting escorted, and so many people got escorted that we became pretty scarce. We couldn't even man, we had only one person manning 4 or 5 tables because we were so low on numbers, and there were so many Democratic challengers there. So I just went to Election Integrity Fund and got my nonpartisan tag. And the reason I did that was not because I was not there for my party or trying to do something on behalf of my party. I'm just trying to ensure that the right thing is being done. So when I got the nonpartisan tag, at the counting board, the poll workers were very respectful because of my nonpartisan tag. But when I had the GOP tag, the first thing they said is 6 feet. You know the rule or you will be sent out. And I'm like, when I had the nonpartisan tag, a lot of rules didn't apply to me. So that just told me that, those poll workers, the Democratic challengers, ACLU, and so many other people that were there, their only job there was to block the GOP challengers from doing their job. And when I was with the nonpartisan tag and talking to Democratic challengers, most of them didn't even know what to challenge in a ballot. When I asked him a question, when I was asking supervisor a question, those people were literally confused because they didn't even know what I was asking. And then when I asked one lady, where did you get trained? She said, trained for what? Because they didn't know what they were there for. Their only job, I could tell there, was to block the GOP people from challenging or intimidate them and get them out.
And did you have something to say also about your experience?
Yeah, so because I was a volunteer, I came in for my training around 9:30 p.m. at the TCF Center. 10 o'clock, we went down to the floor. I was stationed by the center of the room. The center of the room, they have all the boxes lined up, and then they have one table full of the duplicate ballots. As I'm sure you're all familiar with duplicate ballots, so they have a table for duplicate ballots. Throughout the entire night, many employees were conducting theft of duplicate ballots. So they would come up to the table of duplicate ballots, grab 3 or 4 duplicate ballots, run back to their table, give one to another person at another table, and never complete the duplicate process. They would stash the ballots under boxes, and I would have to stand there for about 5 minutes and just wait for a duplicate process, and they would just look at me, and it was never, ever completed. So that happened throughout the entire night. Then around 4:30 a.m., we had an announcement that a new shipment of ballots were arriving, and these boxes of ballots were brought in by Mr. Baxter himself at 4:30 a.m. from the rear of the room. So I personally eyewitnessed Mr. Baxter carrying boxes from the rear of the basement of the TCF Center into the tables. So each box, I approximate 600 ballots. And it was like a full, what you have to know is that these tables, there's about 7 tables. They were 10-foot tables each. Every table was full of boxes of ballots. It's not tens of thousands or 20,000s. I approximate 50,000 ballots were brought in. Now, were all of those ballots brought in from the rear entrance to the TCF Center? I don't know. They were brought in from the TCF Center, but there was a lot more than just the ones that were brought in from the rear entrance to the TCF Center. And I'm talking, this is the 6 a.m. This is when we're starting at 6 a.m., the 4:30, 5 a.m. It was 50,000 ballots on the table, equal to the 2 rounds that we did before. We did a round around 10 p.m. to about 1 a.m. and then 1 a.m. to about 4 a.m. And then the boxes were brought in from the rear around 4:30. Then they had the shift change from around 5 to 6. So with the shift change, most of the volunteers were tired at this point. They only expected to be there from 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. So 90+% of them left at 5 a.m. I decided to stick around. So they had the shift change. At 6 a.m., Mr. Baxter and his management team got back on the microphone and said, this is what the new shift change, right? The new employees says, this is what democracy is supposed to look like. Right in front of everyone, the whole room cheered. So this is how you know it's a good sign of a violation, that there's an imbalance of poll workers. This is the new shift. Even the first shift before that, I would say the same thing. But this shift, you can tell it's the same, again, another imbalance of poll workers, because the whole room cheered. So based off my sampling of a dozen duplicate ballots from 6 a.m. to about 2 p.m. the next day, because I was doing duplicates, from these duplicate ballots that I observed, none of them were for Trump. None of them. And from the other 2 shifts or 2 rounds that we did earlier, only 1 ballot that I witnessed from a duplicate was for Trump. So I'm talking just a dozen off my sampling from that 1 shift of 6 a.m. to 2 p.m., none. And throughout the whole night, I only saw 1. 3 other challengers around me told me the same thing from their sampling. So also, we challenged ballots all night. Every challenge was refused. They never carried it out. They never issued challenge ballots. There's no track, no remedy, no records. No recording of any challenge ballots the entire night. So we challenged. Poll workers changed duplicate ballots to straight Democrat ticket. So for example, it would be like a mixed ticket, bubbles filled in everywhere. I witnessed employees taking their pen and filling in the Democrat straight ticket when it's not. And so you're going to have other people testify that when it goes to adjudication that they see 2 different parties filled in. And then 9 times out of 10, you're also going to have testimony too that says that the employees were saying it should go to the Democrats. That's true. Because there's 200 tables, 150 tables, however many tables there are, 5 employees per table, and they all have pens. And I witnessed them writing a ticket for the straight Democrat ticket. So I also witnessed like duplicates of duplicate ballots, which was very strange to me. We were making a duplicate, take it back to the tabulator, and again, make another duplicate of the duplicate. I personally asked the employees, hey, why are we making, first verify, is this a duplicate of a duplicate? They said yes. I said, why? This is the tabulator says unknown reasons. Okay. So, and then I also at the tabulators did see the double counting on the jams. I saw that several times. They would take the ballots that were just scanned and just rescan them again once there would be a jam. And then around 2 p.m., I leave the room for about 5 minutes to grab a snack because they're saying, snacks are coming in, go grab a snack, go ahead. I leave the room 2 p.m. The minute I leave the room, they block out the whole room with coverings. They prohibited access back in for me, and they said it's because we're exceeding COVID capacity. Now I'm going to wrap up with this. Mind you, the entire night, this room was slammed. It looked like the New York Stock Exchange on its busiest day. And then at 2 p.m. the next day, after 70% of the employees have already finished their work, they left the room. Now they're emplacing the exceeded COVID capacity rules, which was pure discrimination.
All right, thank you.
I just have to add one thing to this, the ballots that were an issue. I was at table 57 where I said that I saw a stack of ballots which had a sticky note on it saying not an EPB/S. They didn't know what that meant, but it didn't take me long to figure out why it was saying what it meant. It is when they would scan a ballot, nothing would come on the system. So they would manually enter these. And that's when I figured out that they were not even referring to the poll book. So it is EPB/S, meaning election poll book or system. So none of these details were in either of those. And the thing that when I started writing down the ballot numbers and the last names of the person of the ballot that had the name on that ballot, they were all in sequence. These are absentee ballots, mail-in ballots. They cannot be in sequence. 2232 cannot have 2233 next to it because if they're mailed in, they come in all different numbers. And when I started noticing that these numbers are almost next to each other, like one or the other was in the middle, but then they were almost next to each other, my antennas went up. That's exactly when I thought something is not right here. Then I asked the supervisor. There was not even a date on those envelopes. It said November 0-2020. There was no second number there. Then I said, what is the date on this one? Then they got really mad at me. They said, you're not letting us do our job. You're disturbing us. And at that point, because we really don't want to be kicked out, so we were just kind of not challenging anything because we want to still stay in the room because we barely had anybody. Not only that, the sequence ballot numbers were all from the same area, like the Goddard Street in the downtown Detroit. Goddard Street, sequential ballots, signatures were all alike. They had no date stamp. It said, it was empty after 0. There was no third or second or first or nothing. And none of them were coming up in the system. They were all being entered manually. They even knew that none of these details would even be in the poll book or in the system.
All right. Well, with that, thank you both for your testimony. We're going to go on to questions now. I'll start with Representative Steve Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for being here. I think it's the most compelling testimony we've had tonight. You talked about the 6-foot rule, people being kicked out for that. There was a court case prior to the election dealing with this and saying that you had to allow a poll challenger to break that 6-foot rule to verify information. All right, I've got pretty good eyesight myself. I can't see someone's written address from 6 feet away. Sure. So the court case made it very clear that they did have to allow that. Now, when you're not challenging, you have to keep your 6 feet. Were people allowed to break the 6-foot rule to challenge? And then my second part, when these Republican challengers were kicked out, were they allowed to be replaced by another one? Because it was very evident that there was plenty of other possible Republican challengers there. Were they replaced by one or not?
I'll take the first, you can take the second. The first one, when you said the 6-foot rule, we were in fact given a paper with these rules saying that we can break the 6-foot rule when we have to challenge a ballot. We even had the printed paper with us, and when we would show it to the supervisor, he'd say, we are enforcing the rules that we were given. That's the rule your team that sent you gave you. We don't have to abide by it because that does not apply to us. And we have to keep low profile. You have to understand if we don't want to be kicked out. If we don't want to, I may not be because I'm brown. But all I'm saying is, but that was my trump card that I used all day. But then the thing is, that's not a privilege for a white person. So white people, I could see, were not even daring to ask a question because if they were even a little bit louder, they would say, you're disturbing them, so they need to get out. And you have to understand the poll workers were ganging up with Democrats. They were all in on the same team, and the only people that are being isolated are the Republican, white male Republicans. So that's
Please.
the racism. If people ask me, was I ever treated unfairly, I would say rarely. Come to India, you will know what racism is. But here, no, I've been treated with a lot of respect. Now I see white people are being treated as, so much worse than, I was ever treated. So those people were not able to really loudly challenge because they will get kicked out. They did not want to abide by that rule where we can break that 6-foot rule to challenge a ballot because they didn't want to listen to what we had to say.
As per the second question, no.
They were not being replaced.
Republicans
Once
were
you're
not
out, you're
replaced.
out,
So when a
you can't-
Republican challenger was escorted out, they were not allowed to be replaced by another one.
The only ones welcomed in were the media, no challengers from our side. But I would say there was two separate systems. There was our systems where we were exceeded COVID capacity, fall in line, follow the rules, and then there was the friendly, welcoming. Oh, you're the media. Come on in. Oh, who are you with? You're with them. Come on in.
Another thing I also have to say is when the GOP people were getting escorted out with or without handcuffs, every poll worker and all Democrats stood and clapped like it was some kind of, they all won a lottery ticket. And that is exactly when I decided I'm going to do this, because that was heartbreaking, because these people were doing a job, a volunteer job. They were not getting paid. They all were leaving their work to be here for their country to ensure election integrity. And they were treated like criminals, and that's not fair.
Not America. That's illegal.
Representative LeGrand.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And if I could just ask you the same question I asked the last witnesses. When did you, if you file an affidavit here, or when did you first make Trump's lawyers, when did you give them this story
I
substantially?
didn't meet any Trump lawyers because I was working for Election Integrity Fund. I gave my affidavit the same day on November 4th.
Okay, so you...
I don't know what happened with those affidavits, and I've never met anybody from Trump team until, not even now. I haven't even met anybody yet.
Okay, you filed... So you're saying you filed an affidavit on this on November 4th?
November 4th.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you,
I, in fact,
Representative.
gave all the ballot numbers, the last names, the table number, everything that I observed the same day.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative LeGrand. Next, we'll go to Representative Riley.
Thank you. I just wanted to try to understand what this was like when somebody tried to challenge a ballot. So you would say, I challenge a ballot, then what would happen after that? What was a series of events?
Even before the supervisor or the poll worker would respond to the challenge, the Democrats would just pounce and say, what are you challenging? And then when we try to give them what was the basis for challenge, like as I said, they had no clue because they were not trained. Their only training was to block the GOP people. So when we would say, this is what we are challenging, they'd be like, they're clueless, obviously. And then the poll workers, they would be hostile. And they're like, we are not going to stop what we're doing. If you have a problem, you go take it up with the supervisors. They were all in on it together, so nobody was going to listen to it. Not a single challenge was ever entered. And this was the same thing happening.
So then if you went to the supervisor, he would not do anything?
No, nobody would do anything.
Okay.
So in addition to that, thank you. In addition to that, when there was no Democrat challenger, which I witnessed in the minority of times, I would make a challenge, and the head of the table would say, what's wrong? And I would say, this is wrong. And they say, no, that's not wrong. And I said, no, I'm challenging it. So, for example, just one example is I challenge you for filling in the Democrat straight ticket. Is that, can I challenge that? No, it's not a challenge. No, document, just push it through. That's what they did.
Oh, thank you.
Representative C.A. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, please indulge me. As a woman from the city of Detroit, a woman who has lived, I'm talking about me now, who has lived in the city of Detroit all of my 62 years, and having spoken with many, and by the way, thank you, having spoken with many people who worked the TCF or TFC. TCF.
All right, let's let Representative Johnson continue. And please get to your question, Representative.
I will. So my question really to you, Mr. Chair, I'm going to repeat it again. These people, our guests, are sharing information, just sharing and sharing and speaking and speaking. No one is under oath. The world is watching us right now, and the world is watching right now, and there are one person after another who's testifying or who's making allegations, because that's exactly what they are, allegations of wrongdoing in the city of Detroit. I wonder, and I'm going to ask you the question, did you see any cameras at the TCF Center? No. All right, so.
And Representative, I just want to remind you, I think it was the purpose of today's hearing to hear from people across Michigan who witnessed things at the TCF Center. That's why we're here.
Well, you know, here, and I'm not going to argue with you about that. Okay, so they're here, but they're taking so much time, and I see no Detroiters. There is one Detroiter. Stop that.
Please continue, Representative.
And there is one Detroiter, but I have many emails. Since there's no one who you have in this room to represent Detroiters, except a couple of us in this room, I have emails from Detroiters. We've taken, what, 2 hours?
Did you have a question? I'm willing. Please stop yelling. People in the audience, let me handle this. Representative, listen, we've had hearings in the past, as you know. We'll have more hearings. Today, we've invited Mr. Giuliani, and Mr. Giuliani has brought forward witnesses that he says have firsthand knowledge of fraud. That's what we are doing today.
If we want to find out if...
Please let me finish.
Yes.
All right. So if you want to do other hearings, we're doing more hearings. But today we're here to hear from these people. So do you have a question for these witnesses?
No, I have some concerns, right. Well, many concerns, and I want to just share with you
out of order.
What the concerns
out of order.
are.
Do you have a point of order?
I'm sorry?
Do you have a point of order?
Yes.
What is your point of order?
Point of order is to have them under oath.
You're out of order. As I've said, this is something that is not done here in this state. It's really only...
it may not be done under the state, but you're allowing people to come in here and lie, and I know they're lying.
Representative, you're out of order. I've indulged you, but you're out of order, and we're going to move on.
On behalf of my witnesses, I would like to point out that every single witness we've presented here has sworn an affidavit as to all of these facts.
And so...
Representative, please, I gave you some room there, but we're going to move on. We're going to go
May I say something, please?
Sure.
If that is what you want me to do, I would do it. And I will still repeat the exact same thing I watched. And you know what? I also want to say one thing. If it is a lie, it may change because a liar has to have a lot of memory power. If it is truth, you can ask me in the middle of the night, it'll still be the same.
All right, I'm going to take this here. Please stop. We're going to move on now to Representative Lefebvre.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it very much. Audience members, we're not going to be able to get to the end of this if we continue with interruption. So I would ask a little bit more patience with us. I have 2 questions, as we have 2 witnesses. I hope that's okay, Mr. Chairman.
If there are relevant questions, I will let you proceed.
If they're not relevant, Mr. Chairman, please rule me out of order. I would appreciate it. Question number 1, as I heard from, could you say your name again?
Hema Kolanagi Reddy.
Hema, thank you.
You want to try that?
I'm going to try it once. I'm not going to try it twice because I got a bad memory. I heard that there are sequential ballots from one street called Goddard Street that have no dates.
Correct.
Approximately how many would you say?
Each box would have 50 ballots. There were about three boxes there. I was already tired because we have no chairs. So I took down, after 25 names, there's no point because you can see what's going on. So I immediately wrote down all those details, gave a sworn affidavit to Election Integrity Fund, and I said, this is what I witnessed. These are the names. These are the ballot numbers. And this is not the address, but then I told them that it's Goddard Street is something that just stood out because you can see it on the highway, so I know that name. I'm like, I don't even know what's happening. And we were told not to challenge anything at that point because they said this entire process needs to be challenged. So don't challenge. Try to stay in. Try not to get kicked out. So that's what I was doing.
Very helpful. Thank you. Andrew, approximately how many duplicate ballots did you see in general? And then, if you could, approximately how many of those duplicate ballots, and these are your words, not mine, do you believe were stolen or taken off of the table and brought to places that you believe they shouldn't have been brought to?
So, as my responsibility to stand in the center of the room by the duplicate table, an employee would come up and need a duplicate ballot, right? For example, just to layman's term, let's say there's a coffee stain on the ballot, right? Which none of these ballots had any real issues from as far as I know. They're all tabulator issues. But they would come grab a ballot, and my responsibility was to follow them to their table, to be the challenger, to observe over it. So there would be me, there would be the workers, and there would be a Democrat challenger, and we would observe over it. Throughout the entire time I volunteered, I would say between 2 dozen to 3 dozen. And there were times where we had people stationed around the room. And so if there was someone who was stationed, like a Michigan GOP volunteer, right, was in a specific area, I would tell that employee, hey, watch over this duplicate ballot because I need to run back to the center of the room in case someone steals more ballots again. So they would do that. And if no one was there, then I would watch over it. And I watched over maybe 2 to 3 dozen throughout the whole night. So that's the first part of the question. The duplicate theft started in the beginning of the night, roughly 10:30 p.m., 10:15 p.m. I saw theft of duplicate ballots where they would grab 3, 4. So no clear number. The number that I saw was probably in the first shift, I would say over half a dozen, easy. Second shift, it was more hectic, and I would say roughly the same thing. But you also have to take and consider that the third shift from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. the next day, and also the 1 a.m. shift, because people were leaving at 2 a.m. and 1 a.m. They wouldn't stay until 5 a.m. because we're less people volunteering because they're weeding off. That the table was guarded less, and we have less people, so there's more opportunity for theft. Does that help a little bit?
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Representative Camilleri.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So if what you're saying about the tabulation of ballots is true, and that some of these ballots were counted multiple times, why is it that there are not more ballots than those who are tabulated in our poll book?
I do not know how your system works. I do not. One thing I know is there were several ballots that were not in the poll book or in the system, and they were being entered manually. So how are you finally taking a tally of it? I do not know that. All I'm here to tell is what I witnessed. I do not know, end of the day, how you put all of this data together and how you come up with a number. And if it's tallied like a balance sheet, great. I don't think we would be here if that tallied. My best guess is it did not, so that's why we are going through all this.
So what I'm saying is that, in total, the registered number of voters in Detroit is about 500,000 around. Mm-hmm. The total ballots cast was around 250,000.
Okay.
And so we don't see multiples here, and many other people have alleged that there were far more people who voted than those who live in the city of Detroit, and that just does not add up. It just
Thank you,
add
Representative.
That was not part of my testimony.
I know.
I think you asked the question, and she said she wasn't familiar.
I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. With that, I think we appreciate it. I did want to ask you though. Do you have any? I mean, both of you have been there on the front lines. You've been there in the TCF Center. You've talked today about what you've witnessed. Do you have any suggestions for us as legislators on policies or things that we should look at in terms of how do we prevent some of these things from happening to people like you again in the future? Have you put any thought into that? Like if you were to see new laws or things that need to be looked at in terms of preventing in the next election some of these things from happening at the TCF Center?
I would give you my perspective as being an outsider. You know, I come from a country where a lot of things go wrong. Our countries are known for corruption. But when it comes to elections, there is, from what I've seen here to what we used to do back in India, it is a lot more organized now because we have an identification system. And the fact that now, as the other representative said, that you can actually show up and vote without an ID, it's shocking. How can you allow that to happen? Like, a lot of people think all Indians look alike. I think all Chinese look alike. So how would you tell? If some Chow shows up, you can be anybody and you can vote. And if somebody with my name, you can't even tell my name, anybody can vote on my behalf. So ID should be the basic requirement.
Please, let's let her testify, everyone. We want to allow the witnesses to speak. Thank you.
ID should be the basic thing, and there should be a cutoff date as to when you can request the mail-in ballots. It can't be like you can show up the same day and request it and give it the same day. The whole purpose of the ballot is defeated. I think you can put a lot of measures, maybe put policies that this does not get repeated because, and again, the fact that there was not a Republican present on every counting board, that was also a shocker. A lot of people I know from my own church, they wanted to work as a poll worker, but they were told that the positions were full, so they don't need any more Republicans. If only there was a Republican present at every table, maybe a lot of this would have been avoided. And also, I think, that the whole vitriol of the entire poll workers that were there, that to me was the shocking thing. I would expect a lot more respect. These are all fellow Americans. If it was towards an immigrant like me, at least maybe it's understandable, but these are all fellow Americans. Why would you hate them just because of their political affiliation? Maybe that could change. We're talking a lot about hate, BLM and everything. How about we also just extend it to, the white males or, whoever is being also treated very, that's discrimination what I noticed. And this is an outsider perspective.
You want to answer the question? Do you have any suggestions for
I'll
us?
be brief.
Yep.
I mean, simply, we just can't let it happen. The way we do it is up to you, and that can change. You have to think about it. Law changes over time, and it's going to continue changing for the next thousands of years, but we simply can't let this happen, because if we don't let this happen, then reality will change for the next thousands of years. So I would suggest maybe better enforcement immediately after the election, because clearly we're now heading into December. We don't want to cut it this close. We need, in the short term, a body that can say the day after the election or 2 days after the election, there's 20,000 dead voters, wipe them out immediately. And this should be apolitical, not political. They're just clearly dead. Have the database, enforce it. Why are dead voters still, now they're certified now? And I'm not trying to make a political statement, but we certified that knowingly.
Thank you. Well, I know you both are very brave coming here today, and I understand it's shocking the things that you've said today about what you've witnessed at the TCF Center. So thank you both for your testimony. We appreciate it. And now, Mr. Giuliani, I think we'll move on to the Colonel here. It's all right. So Colonel Phil Waldron is here. Please, when you're ready, Mr. Waldron, can you explain why you're here, what your background is, your expertise, and when you're ready, please begin.
Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to look at some statistical analysis. I worked with a team that's been looking at the voter manipulation, election manipulation since November of 18. I started looking at this issue in August of this year. doing a deep dive on several key areas with some of the electronic voting machine companies. And we started looking at some of the vulnerabilities that have been mentioned on the floor of the U.S. Congress and Senate that have been widely published in, publicly available documentaries. So we began looking at the problems immediately after the election, doing analysis on anomalies in the data, and then we also did some forensics on a couple of locations up in northern Michigan in Central Lake Township and Antrim, and then talked to folks at Star Township. And all this information is in affidavits as well, sworn affidavits. In a nutshell, we began to look at anomalies in the voting systems. We looked at publicly available information from your state. First thing we noticed was that there are 643 precincts in Michigan with a voter turnout above 80%, which is a little bit anomalous. There were 21 precincts that were over 90%, 10 precincts that had exactly 100% voter turnout, and 6 precincts that were over 120% voter turnout. So as we began to look at that, my team focused on anomalous patterns where votes were entered in an amount of time that was physically impossible for the tabulation machines to process the votes. And so we found four spikes in the analysis that exceeded the tabulation machine's ability to process that amount of votes in a timeline. And that was in Kent County, Macomb County, Oakland County, and Wayne County. And again, this data was from Dominion and published, in open source. So those anomalies pointed us to a couple other things that some of your previous witnesses, who I just heard tonight, but the incremental absentee vote punches there was a big move from 652 on the morning of the 4th. 16,000 absentee votes were processed. Between 652 and 749 local time on the 4th, an additional 213,429 absentee votes were processed. And this aligns with some of the observations that the previous witnesses made. And then at 11:15 that same morning, in a time period of about 8 minutes, which correlates to the time our previous witness, Ms. Jessie, testified, there was 56,098 votes processed in an 8-minute period. Now, each one of these machines can process about 20,000 votes an hour. So you can do the math yourself, or it's in our affidavit. So the anomalous activity led us to believe that just looking at the data, that there were red flags for fraudulent activities, and we have subsequently asked for our team or someone else to do the forensic analysis to determine exactly what happened with those votes and those spikes that could not have been mathematically processed with the amount of machines that were present in the facilities. Our team also went up to northern Michigan to the Central Lake Township. We do have an affidavit from Miss Judith Koslowski. While we were up there, she had a tabulation or retabulation, and showed a pretty significant amount of change in the votes. We published an affidavit with those key elements that showed differences in the data runs and the tapes, and I believe I've provided that to you as well. And then a declaration by Robert Marsh, the Star Township supervisor. A couple of the excerpts. When he said, upon examining the tape at the close of the polls, I could see that President Trump had clearly won the presidential race in Starr Township. He said, I believe the numbers were 462 for President Trump, with Joe Biden receiving 161 votes. Normally, when a candidate has such a large lead, it's safe to assume who the winner would be. Early the next morning, my wife received a phone call from a friend asking what happened to Antrim County going blue, meaning Democrat. At 7:36 that morning, I was texting our stats representative, Tristan Cole, to find out if those were the actual results. At the time, Tristan advised me that the numbers were not right, that Antrim County was reporting 462 votes had been credited to Joe Biden, and President Trump had only received 10 votes. So we saw numerous examples of numbers moving, numbers being flipped and switched. As you realize, the Antrim County is where the 6,000 vote glitch occurred. And if you look at the numerous references in the guidelines for elections in the Help America Vote Act, the Federal Election Commission Voting System Standards, and the Federal Information Security Modernization Act, an error rate is permissible for 1 out of 125,000 ballots. And if you look at just what happened in Antrim County, the error rate was 8.3. So it puts it about 750 times the allowable limit. And according to the regulations, that should have disqualified. They went later and changed that from a glitch to a clerical error, which, they kind of changed up the reporting on that a little bit. In a nutshell, we found several other things using open source data. There is a gentleman named Eric Lutzen, and he has matched up a list. He started looking at voters above the age of 80 that were registered for voting and did vote in Michigan, and 17,327 Michigan voters also had a corresponding obituary. And I didn't print that whole thing out, but I can give you that website for the tabular data, and it's about 350 pages or so. So in the essence of time, I'll close it out. We'd be happy to chat if there's any other specific information that I can provide to you about our findings.
Sure. Thank you. So I just want to understand, I think we was there something you were going to add?
I was going to ask him to spend a few minutes on Dominion.
Okay.
Company. He knows quite a bit about it, and he's one of the few people that has examined their machine.
Okay. Well, let me ask my question, and then we'll ask you about Dominion too. But I just want to understand. So we had the Antrim County Clerk in here, and we had her testify earlier this, in the last few weeks. And one thing that I found from her testimony is that she seemed not to be very well trained. Her clerks locally did not seem to be very well trained, and they basically they didn't seem to know how to work their machines. They didn't seem to run the proper tests from the testimony that would have discovered the mistakes. And then when the election happened, and we saw this 6,000 votes that went for Biden, and Congressman Bergman found that and reported it, and then they looked at it, and they said, "What happened here?" And she said it was a technical glitch or whatever she said. Well, that came from her office, and now a few days later or whatever it was, she alleged it was human error, and that's what she said later. So based on that, what we have to go on in this committee is the testimony we've heard. And based on what she said, that looked like it was human error. If we go off what she said that the tape matched. She said this would have been discovered in a canvas because the tape matched. So I just wanted to hear If you have knowledge of this, if there's anything you can speak to on this, because that was the conclusion that I had come to after hearing her, that this was limited to Antrim County. And again, like I said, Dominion won't come in, so I don't know more. But I know in Antrim County, it sure seemed like the clerk there didn't know what she was doing, and that caused a lot of this problem and confusion. So can you tell us more about what you learned and address that for me? Thank you.
Yes, our forensics team went up to the Central Lake Township.
And can you clarify, is that in Antrim County?
It is in Antrim County.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
And this was included in the forensics report on Central Lake Township in Antrim, Michigan. The report date was November 29th, 2020. And on the 27th, the ASOG forensics team, which is Allied Security Operations Group forensics team, visited the Central Lake Township in Michigan. The clerk presented to two separate paper totals tape from the tabulator with the identification number ID2, tabulator ID2. One was dated poll opened November 3rd, 06/38/48, which was roll 1. And the second dated poll open November 6, 2020, 09/21/58, which was roll 2. She was asked, Ms. Kozlowski.
I ask you, what does that mean? So was one, what were the two dates?
The
were
actual
two tapes?
poll date, November 3rd, and then the second on November 6th.
And there were two tapes.
Two tapes. They ran the ballots and printed roll 2. She was asked by the county clerk's office to come in and do a retabulation on the 6th.
Okay, so there was a one run through and a ticket printed, and we went through that with the clerk. There's a ticket that shows the result.
Correct. And
On
then a
November 3rd on
retabulation.
Election Day.
Then a retabulation.
On November 6th.
Correct.
And you're saying that was ordered by the county clerk?
By the county clerk's office. She said she was notified by Connie Wing of the county clerk's office and asked to bring the tabulator and ballots to the county clerk's office for retabulation.
Okay, so what did you find when you looked at that?
They ran, roll 1 had a total of 1,494 total votes. Roll 2 had 1,491 votes. They had 3 less ballots because 3 ballots were damaged in the retabulation process. So Ms. Kozlowski said that she and her assistant manually refilled out the 3 ballots, curing them, and ran them through a ballot counting system. But the final numbers did not reflect the inclusion of those 3 ballots. So the shifts in the votes from tape 1 or roll 1 to roll 2. On election night, President Trump received 566 votes. Vice President Biden received 340 votes. On the recount, Trump had 1 less vote at 565, while Biden was unchanged at 340. The other areas on the down ballot where we saw a lot of different number shift was a proposed ordinance to authorize marijuana, and then a retail establishment within the village of Central Lake. So those were the ballot proposal to authorize marijuana went from not passing to passing by shifting votes and removing when the recount, the 3 ballots were not counted, the proposal passed with 1 vote. And then for school board, even though this was a ranked voting, and the top 2 apparently were going to be elected, there was a significant number of votes. There were 742 votes added to this total. Between the election, there were 1,068 votes, and then on the recount, there were 1,810 votes that showed 112 write-in candidates. The school board member shifts were significant, as well as there was a change in the state proposal 20-1. There was a change in those numbers. So the way that works, the township clerk was given 2 compact flashcards as a security key. One of the compact flashcards is known as the ISD card, so it goes into the administrator slot, and then the CF card goes into the poll worker slot. and then there's a security key that's used on the security key. So Ms. Kozlowski was given the cards that were in proper retention and reran the tapes. The difference in the administrator card, which is the software load, the poll numbers were pretty much the same, but votes in between those two runs shifted. So there's a discrepancy in the forensics.
How did you find that?
The discrepancies?
Huh?
In the actual tapes, in the tabulation
one
tapes.
machine?
One machine, yes.
It made that many mistakes?
They made a lot of mistakes.
Did it do anything right?
It kept pretty close to the other votes, but it did not meet with the standards of the
pretty
Federal
typical of a
Federal
Dominion
Election
machine?
Commission. We have not examined forensically in this election more than this machine. It's pretty much been blocked.
So
It definitely is far outside the limits of the 1 in 250,000 vote error rate.
So
Based
just
on that, would you want to examine more machines?
Yes, sir.
just to understand, so what the clerk has said is that, and I heard you say there were two tapes, and then you kind of went through how there were some differences on the two tapes. What the clerk has said is that there was a problem basically with the way the count was displayed on the website, but that when they looked at the tape, that the count was accurate, and that would have been caught in the canvas. Do you agree with that, or do you disagree?
So the votes were canvassed on election night, according to Ms. Kozlowski, and approved. And for some reason that she did not know, she was asked to come back in to redo. She says on this is the declaration of Ms. Judith L. Kozlowski, and it's signed and dated, and this declaration is under penalty of perjury. She said on November 5th, I was contacted by, on election night, we close the polls after the absentee ballots have entered into the tabulator. We take our ISD cards to the machine and take them, the security fob, and the results of the electronic poll book to the county clerk's office that night. She said, I received my ISD cards when I went to the county building and received my precinct kits from Connie Wing prior to the election, and never received nor was made aware of an update, as I did not need any updates. On Thursday, November 5th, I was contacted by Connie Wing of the county clerk's office and asked that I bring my tabulated locked ballot container and tabulator to the clerk's office for retabulation. Because of time constraints, a retabulation did not occur, and I was asked to return on Friday, November 6th. I was given the ISD cards and security fob. We set it up, and the retabulation began at 9. We finished at 8:55. The retabulation was done in the presence of the Antrim County Board of Canvassers and the Antrim County Sheriff, along with the Deputy Clerk, Patricia Marshall. At the completion of the retabulation, all the voted ballots from November 3rd, I asked that the Board of Canvassers was ready for me to close the poll and run the tally tape, which I did. It was at this time that I noticed a number of votes cast on November 6th had changed from the tape on November 3rd. So I stated to the board that the numbers had changed. The board did not respond to my comment. To this date, I still do not know why Central Lake Township was the only township that had to retabulate. Other township clerks asked me why I had to do this, and I could not explain. And that is item number 5 on her declaration. So that's what I know.
Okay, thank you. Well, next we'll go to Representative Steve Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So in your analysis, you talked about how the number of votes coming in were at a rate higher than they could actually be processed through the machines.
Correct.
And this is after the polls have closed?
Yes, sir. This is...
So forgive my ignorance here, but the way I understood it is that the numbers don't get counted one by one. A precinct will count all their ballots, and then they submit all their numbers. So the fact that there's a lot of numbers coming in within a short period of time isn't because a bunch of ballots all of a sudden get counted. It's because machines from all over the state that had been counting for hours all day long finally decided to upload their information. I mean, am I missing something here? Like, that's how I always understood how these things work is, I live in the city of Wayland. I go, I vote. They, I think, 7 to 8 o'clock, they shut down. They do everything and then they upload it. They didn't all of a sudden run through 1,000 votes. No, those 1,000 votes were counted over hours and hours.
So the timeline of the reporting, which is it's got timestamps on the data files, the data logs, where it's uploaded. Those show 4 spikes that totaled 384,000 votes in a combined interval of 2 hours and 38 minutes. So those.
Why is that not possible? Because they're not running 300,000 ballots through that quickly. That's just
Correct.
machines
Yeah.
from around the entire state. So if you have the city of Detroit with 250,000, obviously Detroit came in later, but hypothetically, there's big cities in Michigan, big precincts, and they start filing at the same time. It seems to me like that's actually quite logical that you would have a lot coming in a short amount of time. As someone who's a political candidate, as I watch the numbers come in, usually there's nothing, and then all of a sudden you get a bunch of spikes. Oh, we got City of Kentwood. Oh, we got Gaines Township. You start seeing things come in. I don't think that's proof of fraud or anything. I think that's just how it works. Am I missing something here?
So if you look at the total number of machines, and the machines can count about 2,000 ballots per hour per machine, the calculation sum would yield about 100,000 ballots as the maximum number of ballots that could be processed.
But they're not
Tabulation.
processing that ballot in that
Machines.
time frame. They've been processing those ballots all day long. They are just uploading the total number at that time.
Well, they're actually uploaded at various intervals along that timeline throughout the day.
Wait, say that again?
They're uploading those results at various, across that timeline throughout the day.
I don't think that's accurate. I don't think they upload results until after everything is done. I mean, that's actually a pretty big deal with Republican, at least. We actually have been very clear of, you don't start reporting the ballots until everything is done, everything is closed out. So I don't think that's actually accurate. If that is accurate, that's something we need to look into, that they're continuously uploading the numbers throughout the day, but that's not my understanding.
Yeah, so if you look the Edison data provided to the New York Times, it shows pretty much of a continual upload throughout the day. And then there are spikes that occur at specific times that are bump loads, but I can provide this to you.
The question is, did you give us that? As I know you gave us a packet, that's not in it.
It should be in the affidavit that
Okay.
I
We
provided
don't have
to you,
that.
Mr.
Okay.
Chairman.
Did he answer your question? Okay. Next, we'll go to Representative Camilleri.
I'll pass. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Representative Lefebvre.
Yeah, thank you, Representative Johnson. If you and I agree on the thing you were just talking about, that could be a real problem if something is different. But Colonel, tell me if I'm wrong, 10 precincts in the state you believe voted at 100% approximately?
That was according to data from the state, yes, sir.
6 precincts at above 100%?
Correct.
Add those up for me. About how many votes is that?
We just looked at voter turnout, so I didn't add up the votes from those precincts.
Think you could send me an email? Let me know the total number of votes there.
Why don't you, we'll have him send it to the committee. We'll work with that. We can send it to the clerk. Continue, Rep. Lefebvre. Did he answer your question?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Okay. All right. And I wanted to, we had talked about Dominion. Was there something that you wanted to discuss about Dominion? I understand that perhaps you've examined these machines. I know for us, we can't get Dominion to come in and testify. And one thing that I would like to do is examine the machines to understand, because my belief is that if we could look at the machines, if we could examine their software, we'd have a good idea then of whether all this stuff is true or not. But the problem that I have is that because Dominion won't come in, they won't testify, they won't provide us machines, they won't do these things. It's hard for me to wrap around this Dominion theory because basically we're going off of what people are saying and we're hearing nothing from Dominion. So, as we're investigating, I think that would be very valuable to us. But from what I understand, you've looked at this. So what can you tell us about the Dominion voting system?
We began looking at these companies, as I mentioned, the team that we joined that had begun studying this back in 2018 after the Kentucky governor's race, and then several races in Texas with the ES&S machines, we really started looking at the lineage of these companies and the code to the software. And they really seem all go back to Smartmatic, or SGO Smartmatic. They do have licensure agreements between Smartmatic and Dominion, between Smartmatic and ES&S, which is another major voting machine. And really the core of these voting systems are rife with vulnerabilities. I was an information warfare officer, so I looked at ways to penetrate, defeat, and corrupt other systems, whether it was through electronic warfare, through other means. And these systems are highly vulnerable to penetrations at multiple levels throughout the system. The easiest way and the most discreet way is USB drives. In classified systems in the military, I worked with both secret and top secret and other special access programs. All those machines had the USB drives deactivated. You could not use them just because of the critical vulnerability. These machines all work off of USB drives, and so we've found in dealing with Pennsylvania and in Arizona, there is no control, there is no chain of custody in the USB drives. Workers can stick a USB drive in. We could stick a USB drive into any of your laptops. You don't know what's on there, and you can change software, you can change operating systems with the USB drives. And the core of these systems is manipulability. This is the operator's manual and the implementation statement for 5.1. One of the myths that has been propagated even by the director of CISA at Homeland Security, which is the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, is that, well, these machines are not connected to the internet. In the operator's manual, there's a whole page of references that show you how and when to connect and what selectors to connect to servers and to routers, so it is connected to the internet. That's how you get election night reporting. That's through another company called Clarity Elections. They provide early reporting to the news media. Matter of fact, as I was looking at one of the counties where I saw the spike, I believe it's Oakland County. I was going to the Oakland County, the 2020 elections results, and I clicked on the elections results, and a warning flag pops up to the right side, and it says, "You're leaving this domain. You are going to clarityelections./mi." So the information for the counties in your state isn't really maintained or owned by your county and state, but rather a corporation that's owned by SOE Software and Scytl, SCYTL, which is a Madrid, Spain corporation. It went bankrupt in May of 2020 and was purchased by another UK registered company. So we've recently found, and we're digging further, that there was a $400 million financial transaction to Dominion Voting Systems in October, 1 month before our election. We're digging into that, but we know through some of the leaked information from the Panama banking system that SGO, Smartmatic, and Dominion both share a physical address in a small building in Barbados as registered headquarters. So these companies share licensing agreements. They share a common core of their DNA is the code, is the software. And I'll be happy to provide you an electronic copy of this operator's manual. And when you read through here, and you can see all the options that administrators and operators of these systems have, like some of the previous witnesses mentioned, they can vote blank ballots, they can delete data, they can mass adjudicate write-in ballots. And so it is designed to be inaccurate. It's designed to, if an individual or a team of individuals had a malign purpose, this would be the tool that I would want to use.
Can I ask you,
Colonel, tell them the history of Smartmatic. When did it start? Where did it start?
Smartmatic.
And what was it developed to do?
Smartmatic was developed in Venezuela. Hugo Chavez was the president, and basically he invested, I believe, 28% of the money to fund Smartmatic to control the Venezuelan elections. I personally debriefed the son of a Cuban intelligence officer who was at dinner with two of Hugo Chavez's relatives when Maduro's election was in question due to the populist uprising in Venezuela. And they told him, the son of the Cuban intelligence officer, don't worry, it's guaranteed. Our father invested the money to start SGO. So,
and have they been involved in numerous elections that have been questioned as to the integrity of the election?
Numerous elections in Central America, the South Pacific, and Europe.
And are they allied with Dominion?
Well, at least in Barbados, with a shared.
Does Dominion use their software?
The Dominion software, so that where the merger of the DNA comes, is there's the licensing agreement, and as a result of a lawsuit, Sequoia Voting Systems was sold off of SGO and purchased by.
Who owned Sequoia?
SGO Smartmatic owned Sequoia. They sold Sequoia Voting Systems to Dominion Voting Systems, and they also purchased Premier as a result of an antitrust. So all of the DNA and the code and the software in these machines are very, very similar. As a matter of fact, there's testimony on the House floor as late as July of 2019 that decries that we're actually still using this equipment that is full of holes. My team is doing analysis all over the country right now. We can't meet the demand because there's so much. But there was about a 40-page document with the vulnerabilities that was pulled down off of Stacey Abrams' website about these systems across the party, across the aisle. There have been Democratic senators, Senator Klobuchar, Senator Warren, as well as Republicans. So this is an American issue. This is a national security issue. Our voting systems are defined as national critical infrastructure, just as critical as nuclear power plants, just as critical as petrochemical, steel, and ports.
What's fractional voting?
Can I ask? I'm going to ask a question here. So I just wanted to understand why. So when we hear these things, they say in the press, they say this has been debunked, right? Every time I read about this, they say this has been debunked. It's fake news. Please, we don't want to have to remove anybody, and I'm serious. We're not supposed to yell out here, but let me ask you. When you hear that, why do you think they're saying that? Because we do hearings like this. For many people, this is the only time they hear testimony like yours. But why are they saying that it's debunked? Do you have a theory on that?
I have a theory in life, and it's about people and personal behavior. It's either a variable of competence or a variable of commitment. In this case, they would be either incompetent. They haven't done the research like I and my team have done. They haven't looked to the user's manual of these systems. They haven't rationally thought that, okay, these election votes are updated in real time. How does that happen? Nobody's getting in from a car from Lansing, Michigan, and driving it to New York to be uploaded at the Rockefeller Center. So these are connected. And actually in the operating diagrams of the systems, the high-level block diagram, this is Democracy Suite. It shows Democracy Suite, EMS application and document management server, the Democracy Suite database server, the data center, This is data. This is electronic data. Your ballots are put into the machine, and they're turned from a paper ballot to a ballot image. And the ballot image is data, and the data can be manipulated with something as easy as a USB drive.
Thank you. Representative Riley.
Thank you. So I'm just trying to figure out, would not a recount detect if you had a software manipulate the votes? I mean, wouldn't that be easily seen?
So what we observed, and your other witnesses tonight observed, is a injection of paper ballots. Whether those are accurate or not, you could recount the manual ballots, but unless you did a forensic audit of the ballot itself, you wouldn't be able to tell if the ballot was fraudulent or pre-printed. We have technology to be able to do that. A gentleman that I'm associated with in Texas, his name is Javon Pulitzer. He invented the QR code and scanner and scanning capability, owns a patent on all that. He's devised a way to determine fake ballots or ballots who were pre-printed. So
yeah, but isn't that another issue altogether? I'm just talking about
this is a multifaceted issue, but yes, the forensics data, if you have access to the software code that was driving the algorithms in these machines, and I say algorithm because the data that's the raw feed of the data is reported in decimal places. So if you're tabulating votes, your vote, my vote, Representative Johnson's votes, well, that's 3 votes. This data is reported in 3-digit fractions. So how is that possible in an additive function? So the software and the code is what we would need, or a qualified forensics team of your choice would need to look at to determine what algorithms were in the USB drives that drive the machines. And the number pattern that we see is that they would pick 3 to 4 precincts. They would run the algorithm for an X amount of time till they got close to the precinct threshold so it wouldn't kick off the overvote situation, and then they would move it to another precinct. So this is a complex issue with injection. In Pennsylvania, we heard a gentleman who, again, signed an affidavit as a truck driver that he delivered a truckload of ballots to a vacant lot in Pennsylvania from New York, and his assumption was the ballots were just left there. There was no one there to sign his bill of lading, to give the bill of lading. So the hypothesis or the assumption is that was used as a staging area for people to go pick up pre-printed ballots to move into the system for example, what we saw in some of the late absentee numbers in Michigan.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. With that, we'll move on. Thank you for your testimony today. We appreciate it. And now we're going to invite up one more person, Monica Palmer, who's a Wayne County canvasser, if I understand right. And then we'll let you testify for a couple minutes, tell your story, and then we'll let the Trump legal team close after that. So we ran a little long on that first witness, and we wanted to give some deference there because obviously she had been. She'd been through a lot, and she really shared a very powerful story, and you could tell. I mean, it's intimidating to come here to the legislature and to deal with what she's dealt with, but, we appreciate that she came to tell her story. We wanted to give her some time. But we wanted to also allow you, Monica, to come in and testify. So when you're ready, please tell your story and explain why you're here. Thank you. Make sure you push the red button.
Thank you, Chairman Hall and members of the committee. I appreciate the opportunity to address you this evening. I am Monica Palmer. I am the chair of the Wayne County Board of Canvassers. As you may be aware, after the primary, we had 76% of the precincts, the absentee precincts in the city of Detroit were unrecountable because they were out of balance without explanation. We had bipartisan support and a request for an investigation by the State Bureau of Elections, and we requested the Secretary of State to assist with administering the general election in November in the city of Detroit for the absentees. After the primary, when we had the 76% of out-of-balance precincts, I had people question me, Monica, is it fraud or is it human error? And at that point, I didn't know because I'd never witnessed the process before. So election night, 9 p.m., November 3rd, I went down to TCF Center. I was credentialed as a GOP challenger, and I went in to observe the process, hoping to see some improvements being made. I did not challenge anything while I was there. I was strictly there to observe. I did note one thing, the ballot containers, the metal boxes that hold the ballots once everything's sealed up at the end of the evening. The Board of Canvassers, the County Board of Canvassers are responsible on an incremental basis to touch and feel and make sure that those ballot containers are secure. And they're labeled with a sticker that says this container is certified and it's got the signatures of the board members on it. As I was walking through TCF Center, I located 5 ballot containers that had red "Do Not Use" labels on them. They were damaged. They were new containers that were ordered. They had manufacturing defects. The weld on the back seal, the seal on the welding on the back side was not completed properly, and you could slide paper in and out of the back of the boxes. Those containers that were used with the red labels will not be recountable. The chain of custody has been broken for those boxes. I was at TCF Center for 26 hours straight. I got there 9 o'clock election night. I left around 11 p.m. Wednesday evening after counting had been completed. They were working on closing up the poll books. There's a lot of other testimony from challengers that can describe the activities that happened in there. I won't waste your time with that. I want to move on to the canvass. We had gone through the initial canvass of about 20% of the absentee counting boards and realized that the number of voters in the poll book, so people cast, did not match the number on the tabulator tape, ballots cast. It is the job of the canvass, the county canvass, to correct any mathematical errors, to make those two numbers balance or reconcile the difference. The good news here is that the batches of ballots that may have been scanned multiple times, the job of the canvass is to catch that mathematical error and correct it. So if you have 100 voters, 100 ballots that were issued, and there's 300 ballots that were tabulated, you count the ballots in the box, it should match the ballots that were issued, 100, 100. You retabulate them, and that's corrected. Things you cannot catch in the ballot, in the canvass. You cannot catch date stamps on envelopes. You cannot catch the validity of a voter, whether they're dead or not. You cannot catch signature verification. Those are things we do not look at within the canvass. Just a little point of reference to help you manage through the details you're hearing. An observation for TCF Center. In the primary, we had workers, poll workers working long hours. There appeared to be a change in the general election, where there were shifts of employees. And I believe that was a positive change. It was good to see. So you didn't have people very, very, very tired trying to close these boxes out. What I did notice on the night shift, election night, 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. the next morning, there were 134 counting boards. They had 5 workers at each table and supervisors throughout. The majority of that shift, those workers were not processing ballots. They were sitting idle. So as you're looking forward to legislation and concerns about, do we need more time to process these ballots? The time is not involved in actually going through the ballots or scanning them through the tabulators. It's the adjudication process. And the adjudication process is a screen. If there's a ballot that the machine can't read, humans have to view that that ballot on a screen and make a determination. That process is the bottleneck in the timeline that it took to get through processing the absentee ballots in Detroit. So as you move forward with potential legislation, maybe look at some funding sources to get the right amount of equipment to help them get through that. Back to the canvas and the numbers not matching. 20% into processing the absentee ballots, we realized we had a large portion that did not match. And it's standard procedure to contact the clerk when you have that happen to ask if they have any envelopes that may not be scanned, if they have anything stuck in an auxiliary bin, ask them for a corrected list if possible. We did not get corrected statement of voters, so people cast, until 13 days after the election. It was the afternoon, the day before certification, when a large black tote was brought into the canvas containing multiple precincts' new voter lists. Some of those voter lists managed to make the balances work out. At the end of the day, less than 24 hours later, the canvas was given a verbal report for the plus and minus. We were not provided with an executive summary written, even though I requested one. And that oral report, my quick math showed that 71% of the counting boards, and we've got to be careful because in the primary we were talking precincts, now we're talking counting boards, which are, it's a different math formula. But 71% of those counting boards were unexplained without, were unbalanced without explanation. Having less than 24 hours to get corrected voter lists and going through 134 counting boards to make those differences is not a lot of time. And that is why I originally voted no on the certification, because I believe the state needed 10 more days to continue to dig through that to find those explanations. As you continue to move forward through legislation, with the information I was giving, I can't tell if there was an issue with missing scanning envelopes, if there's an issue with the voter file, with the poll books, with the supplemental lists, with the unlisted list. I don't have that information to be able to know to tell you how to fix that. But getting corrected information 13 days after the election is not the way to go about it. And one more item to note, in the State Board of Canvassers meeting, Daniel Baxter said that they did not issue any revised poll lists. I don't know if he was misinformed or misspoke, but there were clearly an entire tote of revised lists delivered the day before the certification. And I'm happy to answer any questions, and due to time, if you have additional questions, please reach out to me afterwards.
All right, thank you, Monica. And I heard stories about how you were threatened and bullied and attacked by a lot of these radical left-wing people, and so I have my sympathies for that. And you have my sympathies for that. I know you've been through a lot, and it's courageous for you to be here and testifying today. So thank you. With that, I'll go to Representative Weber.